I'm bringing Tom to the Christmas party, Natalie announced, not looking up from her laptop screen. Consider it a trust test. I nearly choked on my coffee. My wife of 7 years had just casually dropped a bomb while reviewing quarterly marketing reports at our kitchen island, her blonde hair pulled back in that severe bun she wore when she meant business. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. A trust test, I repeated, setting down my mug with deliberate care. The morning light streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows caught the diamond on her wedding ring, the one I'd saved 6 months to buy. Exactly. She finally looked at me, those ice-blue eyes calculating. A secure husband would understand that bringing an ex-boyfriend to a work function is perfectly innocent. It shows trust. Tom Harlan, her college boyfriend, now a successful finance guy who'd recently moved back to town with his wife, Sarah. I'd met him twice. Both times he'd looked at Natalie like she was dessert and I was an annoying waiter. Right, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. Trust. Natalie smiled, that patronizing smile I'd grown to hate. I knew you'd understand, Jack. You're so reasonable. Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. At 35, I was a senior associate at Morrison, Blake & Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. I'd clawed my way up from a working-class neighborhood, put myself through law school, and built a reputation for being thorough, precise, and yes, reasonable. But reasonable had become code for pushover in Natalie's vocabulary. When's the party again? I asked, already knowing the answer. Friday night, the grand ballroom at the Meridian Hotel. You remember? The firm's annual Christmas gala. She closed her laptop with a snap. I need to get going. The Henderson campaign presentation is at 9. She kissed my cheek, a perfunctory peck that barely grazed skin, and grabbed her designer purse. The click of her heels on our hardwood floors echoed through the house until the garage door rumbled shut. I sat alone in our pristine kitchen, surrounded by the trappings of success we'd accumulated. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, abstract art that cost more than most people's cars. Everything looked perfect from the outside, just like our marriage. My phone buzzed. A text from my colleague, Marcus. Coffee before the Peterson deposition? Can't. Family drama brewing, I typed back. The wife? Always the wife. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Marcus knew better than to push. He'd been divorced twice and had learned when to stay quiet. I walked to my home office and fired up my computer. The Peterson case files could wait. I had research to do. Tom Harlan worked at Blackstone Financial, pulled down mid-6 figures, and lived in Brookline with his wife Sarah, a pediatric nurse. No kids yet. He drove a Tesla, belonged to the country club, and according to his LinkedIn, had recently been promoted to vice president of investment services. Most interesting was his Facebook profile. Public posts showed a man who loved attention, posting gym selfies and vacation photos with captions designed to impress. But it was the comments on Natalie's posts that made my jaw clench. Heart-eye emojis on her professional headshots, looking amazing as always, on her vacation photos, lucky guy on our anniversary post, with a winking emoji. I'd dismissed it before as harmless flirtation. Now it felt like reconnaissance. My phone rang. Morrison, Blake's main line. Jack Mason. Jack, it's Patricia from reception. Your wife called. She left her phone at home and asked if you could bring it to her office. Of course. Thanks, Patricia. Natalie's phone sat on her nightstand, still plugged into its charger. She must have been more flustered than she'd let on. I unplugged it, intending to drive straight to her office, but the screen lit up with a notification. Tom. Can't wait to see you tonight. It's been too long. The message preview showed on the locked screen. My thumb hovered over the home button. Natalie used the same passcode for everything. Our anniversary date. She'd never changed it. Probably never thought she'd need to. The phone unlocked on the first try. The text thread with Tom went back 3 weeks. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through message after message. Tom. Dinner was incredible. Just like old times. Natalie. Better than old times. We were just kids then. Tom. Sarah's working late again Thursday. Want to grab drinks? Natalie. Jack has that client dinner. Perfect timing. Tom. I keep thinking about what you said. About settling. Natalie. I meant it. We both settled for safe. But safe is boring. The most recent exchange was from last night. Tom. Are you sure about bringing me to the party? Won't Jack suspect? Natalie. Jack suspects everyone of being smarter than him, but he never acts on it. Besides, I'm calling it a trust test. He'll eat it up, makes him feel sophisticated. Tom. You're evil. I love it. Natalie. Just wait until you see my dress. Sarah will look like a nun next to me. My vision blurred. 7 years of marriage, and she was playing games with her ex-boyfriend while mocking me to his face. The trust test wasn't about trust at all. It was about humiliation. Public humiliation. I screenshotted the entire conversation, then scrolled through her call log. Tom's number appeared 17 times in the past month, including 2 calls that lasted over an hour. There were voice messages, too. I played the most recent one. Hey, gorgeous. Just wanted to hear your voice before this boring client meeting. I keep thinking about last Thursday. You were right. We wasted too much time being apart. See you soon. Last Thursday. The night of my client dinner. The night she'd claimed she was having drinks with her friend Elise. I forwarded the voice message to my personal email along with the screenshots. Then I carefully deleted the evidence of my snooping and placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it. The drive to Natalie's office passed in a blur. She worked for Pinnacle Marketing, a boutique agency that handled high-end retail clients. Their offices occupied 2 floors of a glass tower downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture designed to impress. Jack! Natalie's assistant Emma looked surprised to see me. Natalie's in the conference room with the Henderson team. She forgot her phone. Can you make sure she gets it? Of course. Everything okay? You look a little pale. I managed a smile. Just tired. Long night prepping for a deposition. The elevator ride down felt endless. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and called the one person who deserved to know the truth. Sarah Harlan. Sarah, this is Jack Mason, Natalie's husband. We met at the Hendersons' barbecue last month. Oh, hi, Jack. Is everything all right? I need to ask you something, and I hope you won't take it the wrong way. Has Tom mentioned spending time with Natalie recently? Silence stretched between us. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. Why do you ask? Because my wife just told me she's bringing your husband to our office Christmas party as her date. She called it a trust test. A what? That's what I said. I took a deep breath. Sarah, I think we need to talk. Yes, she said quietly. I think we do. We agreed to meet at Brewster's, a quiet coffee shop near the hospital where Sarah worked. I had 3 hours before my afternoon appointments, plenty of time to compare notes with the other injured party. As I drove through downtown traffic, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Natalie wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail about her reasonable pushover husband. I was a lawyer, and lawyers always played to win. Sarah Harlan looked exactly like what she was, a pediatric nurse who'd been crying. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore scrubs with cartoon dinosaurs on them. She sat in the corner booth at Brewster's, hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was an anchor. "Thank you for calling," she said when I slid into the seat across from her. I wasn't sure if I was going crazy or just paranoid. "What made you suspicious?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The usual things. Working late, new cologne, checking his phone constantly. But the real kicker was when he started going to the gym at 6 a.m. Tom hasn't voluntarily exercised before noon in the 12 years I've known him. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken from Natalie's messages. Sarah's face went white as she read. "Sarah will look like a nun next to me," she repeated. "That bitch. I'm sorry. I know this is hard." Hard? Sarah looked up from the phone, and I saw steel in her green eyes. "Jack, I've been married to Tom for 8 years. I've supported him through 2 job changes, a midlife crisis, and his mother's cancer treatment. I work 12-hour shifts taking care of sick children, then come home to cook dinner and listen to him complain about his boss. And this is how he repays me?" She wasn't crying anymore. She was furious. "What do you want to do about it?" I asked. "I want to destroy them both." The vehemence in her voice surprised me. Sarah seemed so gentle, so soft-spoken. But I was learning that betrayal had a way of revealing people's hidden depths. I was thinking the same thing, I admitted. But we need to be smart about it. Emotional reactions lead to mistakes, and mistakes lead to lawyers, the expensive kind. Sarah leaned forward. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, they're planning to make a public spectacle of their affair at the Christmas party. Natalie's expecting me to smile and play the trusting husband while she parades around with your husband. She thinks I'm too weak to cause a scene." "Are you?" I thought about the question seriously. Old Jack, the reasonable one, would have confronted Natalie privately, maybe suggested marriage counseling, definitely avoided public embarrassment. But old Jack was also the one getting played for a fool. "No," I said. "I don't think I am." Sarah smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. "Good. What's the plan?" We spent the next hour laying groundwork. Sarah had access to Tom's laptop and could get his email passwords. I had Natalie's phone passcode and could monitor her communications. More importantly, we both had insider knowledge of our spouse's weaknesses. "Tom's terrified of looking foolish in public," Sarah explained. "His whole identity is built on being the successful, charming guy everyone likes. Humiliation would kill him." Natalie's the same way, but worse. She's obsessed with her professional reputation. The marketing world here is small. Everyone knows everyone. If she looks bad in front of the wrong people, her career is over. So we hit them where it hurts most. Exactly. Sarah pulled out her own phone and showed me Tom's calendar. He's got a client dinner tomorrow night, supposed to be out until 10. Natalie told me she's having drinks with her friend Elise tomorrow. Want to bet they're actually together? No bet. I'm going to follow him. I shook my head. Too risky. If he spots you, he'll know we're onto them. Better to gather evidence first, then spring the trap when we're ready. The Christmas party? The Christmas party. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to stay in touch. As Sarah gathered her purse to leave, she paused. "Jack, can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot. Do you still love her?" The question caught me off guard. Did I still love Natalie? I loved the woman I'd married 7 years ago, the ambitious but caring marketing coordinator who'd laughed at my terrible jokes and supported my career dreams. But that woman had been replaced by someone cold and calculating, someone who saw our marriage as a convenient arrangement rather than a partnership. "I love who she used to be," I said finally, "but that person's been gone for a long time." Sarah nodded. "I understand. I keep waiting for the old Tom to come back, but I'm starting to think he was never real to begin with." After she left, I sat alone in the coffee shop and planned my next moves. Step 1 was gathering more evidence. Step 2 was recruiting allies. Step 3 would be the party itself, the grand finale where everything would come crashing down. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Thanks for bringing my phone. Working late tonight. The Henderson presentation needs revisions. Don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Good luck with the presentation." But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Pinnacle Marketing's building and waited in the parking garage. At 6:30, employees started trickling out. At 7, the exodus was complete. By 8, the building was dark, except for security lighting. Natalie's BMW was nowhere to be seen. I drove past Tom's office building downtown. His Tesla wasn't in its assigned spot either. They were together somewhere, probably laughing about how easy it was to fool their trusting spouses. The thought made my chest tight with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. Anger was a luxury I couldn't afford, not yet. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. "Jack, it's Marcus. You sound like hell in your voicemails. Want to grab a drink?" Marcus Chen was the closest thing I had to a best friend at the firm. He was brilliant, cynical, and had a sixth sense for office politics. If I was going to need allies, he was the place to start. "Yeah," I said. "I could use a drink, and maybe some advice." We met at Sullivan's, a dimly lit bar near the courthouse that catered to lawyers and cops. Marcus was already there when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and reading case files on his tablet. "You look like someone stole your dog," he said when I sat down. "Worse, someone stole my wife." I told him everything: the trust test, the text messages, the meeting with Sarah. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. "So, let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Your wife is cheating on you with her ex-boyfriend, planning to humiliate you publicly, and you want to turn the tables at the office Christmas party?" "That's the plan." Marcus signaled the bartender for another round. "I'm in." "Just like that?" "Jack, I've watched you get walked on for 2 years. Natalie treats you like hired help at firm functions, and you just smile and take it. It's painful to watch." I was trying to be supportive. "You were trying to be invisible. There's a difference." He leaned forward. "But this version of you, the one who's ready to fight back, this guy I can work with. What do you suggest?" "Information warfare. Natalie's not the only one with connections in this city. I know people at every major agency in town. If we're going to destroy her reputation, we need to make sure the right people are watching when it happens." Marcus pulled out his phone and started scrolling through contacts. "The Christmas party is Friday night, right? That gives us 3 days to set the stage." "What about Tom?" "Leave him to his wife. Sarah sounds like she's got that handled." Marcus grinned. "I like her already." We spent another hour planning. Marcus would reach out to his contacts in the marketing and finance worlds, making sure key industry players would be at the party. I would continue monitoring Natalie's communications and coordinating with Sarah. "One more thing," Marcus said as we prepared to leave. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once we pull the trigger, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over." I thought about coming home to an empty house, about Natalie's cold kisses and calculating smiles, about 7 years of feeling like I wasn't quite good enough for the life we'd built together. "My marriage is already over," I said. "I'm just making it official." When I got home, Natalie's car was in the garage. I found her in the kitchen, eating takeout Chinese food and scrolling through her phone. "How was work?" I asked. "Exhausting. The Henderson people are impossible to please." She didn't look up from her screen. "I'm going to bed early. Big day tomorrow." "Another late night?" "Probably. This campaign is make or break for the agency." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with unfamiliar cologne. "Get some rest. You'll need your energy for the party Friday." She looked up then, and for a moment I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "You're really okay with Tom coming?" "Why wouldn't I be? Like you said, it's a trust test." Her smile was radiant. "I knew you'd understand. You're the best husband a girl could ask for." The words should have hurt, but they didn't. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, the satisfaction of a plan coming together. "I try," I said. "Sweet dreams, honey." As she headed upstairs, I sat alone in our perfect kitchen and smiled. Natalie thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She was about to learn that her reasonable, pushover husband had been studying the board a lot longer than she realized. The game was just beginning. Thursday morning brought the first real test of my newfound resolve. Natalie was in an unusually good mood, humming while she got ready for work and actually making conversation over coffee. "I was thinking we should plan a vacation," she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Maybe somewhere tropical? It's been forever since we had real time together." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She was planning a romantic getaway while conducting an affair, probably trying to assuage her guilt with gestures that cost nothing. "Sounds great," I managed. "After the holidays?" "Perfect. I'll look into some resorts." She kissed my cheek, leaving a faint lipstick mark. "Have a good day, honey." The endearment felt like a slap. I waited until her car disappeared down our street before allowing myself to feel the full weight of her betrayal. 7 years of marriage, and she could lie to my face without a flicker of conscience. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Tom left early for client meetings. His calendar shows nothing until 2 p.m. I typed back, "Natalie's schedule is mysteriously light today, too. Want to do some reconnaissance?" "Already on it. Meet me at the Starbucks on Newbury Street at noon. I have something to show you." The morning crawled by. I tried to focus on the Patterson deposition, but my mind kept wandering to Natalie and Tom. Were they having lunch together right now, laughing about their secret, planning their next move? At 11:30, I told my assistant I'd be out for the rest of the day and drove into the city. Sarah was already at Starbucks when I arrived, laptop open and a grim expression on her face. "I got into Tom's email," she said without preamble. "You need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. Tom's inbox was full of messages from Natalie, but these weren't the flirty texts I'd seen on her phone. These were detailed, calculating discussions about their affair. From natalie.mason@pinnaclemktg.com to tharlanyblackstonefinancial.com. Subject, logistics. "Tom, we need to be more careful about timing. Jack's been asking questions about my late nights. Maybe we should cool it until after the party." Tom's response was immediate. From tharlanyblackstonefinancial.com to natalie.mason@pinnaclemktg.com. Subject, logistics. "No way. I've waited too long to have you back. Besides, your husband is clueless. Sarah too. They see what they want to see. The party will be perfect. Hiding in plain sight while we plan our next move." Next move? I looked at Sarah. "What does that mean?" "Keep reading." The email chain continued. From natalie.mason@pinnaclemktg.com to tharlanyblackstonefinancial.com. Subject, logistics. "You're right about the timing. I've been thinking about what you said, about not wanting to sneak around forever. Maybe it's time to stop pretending our marriages are working. The party could be a trial run. See how it feels to be together publicly." From tharlanyblackstonefinancial.com to natalie.mason@pinnaclemktg.com. Subject, logistics. "I love the way you think. Let's give our spouses a taste of the future. If they can't handle seeing us together, that tells us everything we need to know. Besides, I'm tired of pretending Sarah's enough for me. You've ruined me for ordinary women." My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading. This wasn't just an affair, it was a plan to blow up both marriages publicly. They were using the Christmas party as a test run for leaving their spouses. "There's more," Sarah said quietly. She clicked on another email thread. From natalie.mason@pinnaclemktg.com to tharlanyblackstonefinancial.com. Subject, exit strategy. "I talked to a lawyer friend about divorce proceedings. Community property state means everything gets split 50-50, but there are ways to protect assets if you plan ahead. Jack makes good money, but he's not liquid. The house, his 401k, some savings. Nothing I can't live without. What about your situation?" From Tharlan, BlackstoneFinancial.com. 2. Natalie.MasonnaPinnacleMKTG.com. Subject, RE, exit strategy. Sarah doesn't have much. Nurse's salary, small inheritance from her grandmother. The house is in both names, but I can probably keep it. She's too nice to fight dirty. The real question is timing. Do we wait until after the holidays or pull the trigger sooner? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They weren't just planning to humiliate us. They were strategizing how to financially devastate us in the process. How long has this been going on? I asked. Sarah scrolled through the email timestamps. The first message is from 6 weeks ago, right after Tom got back from that business trip to Chicago. Chicago! Natalie went to a marketing conference there 6 weeks ago. Same conference. They reconnected there and have been planning this ever since. Sarah's voice was bitter. 12 years of marriage, and I'm just a line item in his exit strategy. I studied her face. The gentle nurse from yesterday was gone, replaced by someone harder and more determined. Good. We were going to need that steel. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to beat them at their own game. She closed the laptop. But I need your help. Whatever you need. Tom's planning to ask for a divorce right after New Year's. He's already moved money into accounts I don't have access to. But two can play that game. Sarah pulled out a manila folder. Inside were bank statements, investment records, and insurance policies. Tom's complete financial picture. I've been copying everything, she explained. Tom thinks I'm too trusting to check up on him, but I'm a nurse. I'm trained to pay attention to details. The numbers were impressive. Tom was worth significantly more than I'd realized. Close to $2 million in assets, not counting his stake in Blackstone Financial. Here's what I'm thinking, Sarah continued. Tom's boss, Richard Blackstone, is old school. Family values, traditional marriage, the whole package. If he knew Tom was planning to leave his wife for another married woman, it would destroy Tom's career prospects. You want to tell his boss? I want to do better than that. I want to show him. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the camera roll. The photos made my blood boil. Tom and Natalie at a restaurant holding hands across the table. Tom's hand on Natalie's back as they walked into a hotel. A kiss in the parking lot of an upscale bar. When did you take these? Yesterday and this morning. I called in sick and followed them. Her smile was sharp. Tom's right about one thing. I am too nice to fight dirty. But I'm learning. I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. These are good, but we need more. We need them to hang themselves publicly. The party. Exactly, but we need to make sure the right people are watching when they do. I told her about my conversation with Marcus, about his plan to ensure key industry figures would be at the party. Sarah nodded approvingly. I can do something similar. Richard Blackstone's wife serves on the hospital board with me. If I mention that Tom's bringing a colleague to the party, she might decide to attend. Perfect. What about Natalie's boss? David Chen, no relation to Marcus. He's been looking for an excuse to get rid of Natalie anyway. She's talented but difficult to work with. If he sees her making a spectacle of herself with a married man, it gives him the ammunition he needs. We spent the next hour refining our plan. By the time we parted ways, I felt like we had a real chance of pulling this off. But first, I needed to handle some business of my own. The drive to Morrison, Blake took 20 minutes. I found Marcus in his office, surrounded by case files and empty coffee cups. How did it go? He asked. I showed him the photos and email screenshots. Marcus whistled low. They're not just cheating. They're planning a hostile takeover of both your lives. That's what it looks like. Good thing we're not going to let that happen. Marcus pulled out his phone. I made some calls this morning. David Chen from Pinnacle Marketing will definitely be at the party. I told him there might be some networking opportunities. Richard Blackstone is trickier, but I think I have an angle. What kind of angle? Blackstone Financial is looking for legal representation on a merger deal. Big money, high profile. I might have mentioned that you'd be at the party if he wanted to discuss it informally. I stared at him. You're using me as bait? I'm creating opportunities. There's a difference. Marcus grinned. Besides, you could use the business. Divorce lawyers are expensive. He wasn't wrong. If I was going to start over, I'd need every advantage I could get. There's one more thing, Marcus continued. I did some digging on Tom Harlan. Guy's got a reputation as a player. This isn't his first affair. What do you mean? I have a friend at Blackstone. Says Tom's been through 3 close friendships with married women in the past 5 years. He gets off on the conquest, then moves on when things get complicated. The information hit me like a physical blow. Natalie thought she was special, that she and Tom had some grand romantic destiny. In reality, she was just the latest in a string of married women he'd seduced and discarded. Does Sarah know? Not yet. I thought you should decide how to handle that. I considered it. Sarah deserved the truth, but she was already fragile enough. Maybe it was better to let her discover Tom's true nature on her own terms. I'll tell her after the party, I decided. Right now, we need her focused. Fair enough. Marcus stood up and grabbed his coat. Come on. We have shopping to do. Shopping? You can't show up to your wife's public humiliation looking like a grieving widower. We need to get you a suit that says, "Successful lawyer who's about to destroy his enemies." Despite everything, I laughed. Is that a specific look? Trust me, I've been divorced twice. I know exactly what we're going for. As we headed for the elevator, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. For the first time in my marriage, I wasn't reacting to Natalie's moves. I was making my own. Tomorrow night she would learn that her reasonable, pushover husband had been paying attention all along, and the lesson was going to cost her everything. Friday evening arrived with the kind of bitter December cold that made Boston feel like the Arctic. I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, adjusting the tie on my new charcoal suit. Marcus had been right. The tailored cut and confident styling made me look like a different person. Sharper, more dangerous. You look handsome, Natalie said from the bathroom doorway. She was stunning in a black cocktail dress that hugged every curve and left little to the imagination. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like a woman preparing for seduction. Thank you. You look beautiful. She smiled and moved closer, straightening my tie with unnecessary precision. I'm glad we're doing this, Jack. The trust test, I mean. It shows how strong our marriage is. The casual lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I almost admired her skill. Almost. I'm looking forward to meeting Tom properly, I said. It'll be nice to get to know him. He's excited to meet you, too. I've told him so much about you. I bet she had. The drive to the Meridian Hotel passed in comfortable silence. Natalie scrolled through her phone, probably texting Tom final arrangements. I focused on the road and ran through my mental checklist. Sarah was in position. Marcus had confirmed that both David Chen and Richard Blackstone would be attending. The pieces were all in place. The grand ballroom was exactly what you'd expect from a high-end corporate event. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and enough networking opportunities to choke a horse. Morrison, Blake had reserved 3 tables near the front, a power position that put us in full view of the room. Jack! Natalie! David Chen materialized beside us as we entered. Natalie's boss was a thin, nervous man who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. So glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, Natalie replied smoothly. David, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine, Tom Harlan from Blackstone Financial. He should be here soon. David's eyebrows rose slightly. Blackstone? Impressive. I'd love to meet him. I'm sure you would, I murmured. We made our way to the Morrison, Blake tables. Marcus was already there, looking sharp in a navy suit and talking animatedly with several colleagues. He caught my eye and nodded almost imperceptibly. Jack Mason! Richard Blackstone appeared at my elbow, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that came from decades of success. Marcus Chen tells me you might be interested in discussing some legal work. Always happy to explore new opportunities, I replied, shaking his hand. Excellent. I'm here with my wife tonight. She's on the hospital board with one of your colleagues' wives, I believe. Sarah something? Sarah Harlan, I said carefully. Tom Harlan's wife. Ah, yes, Tom. Bright young man, though I sometimes worry about his judgment. Blackstone's tone was neutral, but there was something watchful in his eyes. Is he here tonight? He should be arriving soon. As if summoned by our conversation, Tom Harlan walked into the ballroom. He was everything I remembered. Tall, handsome, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never being told no. He wore his success like expensive cologne, obvious and overwhelming. Natalie spotted him immediately and moved across the room like a heat-seeking missile. I watched her face light up as she reached him, saw the way she touched his arm just a moment too long, the way she tilted her head when she laughed at something he said. Interesting, Richard Blackstone murmured beside me. What's that? Tom seems quite taken with your wife. They're old friends from college, I said evenly. I see. Tom and Natalie made their way back to our table, and I got my first close look at them together. The chemistry was obvious. Stolen glances, casual touches, the kind of electric awareness that came from forbidden attraction. They weren't even trying to hide it. Jack. Tom extended his hand with a politician's smile. Great to finally meet you properly. Natalie talks about you all the time. His handshake was firm, his eye contact direct. He was good at this. The charming performance, the concerned interest in my work, the casual compliments about my wife. If I hadn't read his emails, I might have actually liked him. Tom's been telling me about his work at Blackstone, Natalie said, her hand resting on his arm. It sounds fascinating. It is, Tom agreed, though not nearly as creative as what Natalie does. Marketing is an art form. They were gazing at each other like teenagers. I glanced around the table and saw that everyone had noticed. Marcus looked disgusted, David Chen appeared puzzled, and Richard Blackstone's expression had gone carefully blank. Tom, Blackstone said quietly, might I have a word? Of course, sir. Tom's confidence flickered slightly, but he followed his boss toward the bar. I should check my makeup, Natalie announced, clearly wanting to intercept whatever conversation was happening. I'll come with you, said a voice behind us. Sarah Harlan stood there in a simple but elegant navy dress, her auburn hair styled in an updo that showed off her graceful neck. She looked beautiful, composed, and absolutely furious. Sarah, Natalie's face went white. I didn't realize you were coming. Last-minute decision. The hospital board meeting ended early and Mrs. Blackstone mentioned the party. I thought it would be nice to support Tom. The two women stared at each other across the table. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Shall we? Sarah gestured toward the ladies' room. They left together, and I found myself alone with Marcus and David Chen. The silence stretched uncomfortably until David cleared his throat. Jack, I have to ask, is there something going on between your wife and Tom Harlan? Marcus and I exchanged glances. Why do you ask? Because they're acting like teenagers at prom, and it's making everyone uncomfortable. This is a professional event, not a dating service. I'm sure it's nothing, I said carefully. They're just catching up. David didn't look convinced, but before he could respond, raised voices from across the room drew our attention. Tom and Richard Blackstone were having what looked like an intense conversation near the bar. Tom's face was flushed, and his gestures were becoming more animated. Excuse me, David muttered, and headed in their direction. Marcus leaned closer. How are you holding up? Better than expected. It's almost surreal watching them perform like this. The wives have been gone a while. He was right. Natalie and Sarah had disappeared into the ladies' room 15 minutes ago. Either they were having a very long conversation about makeup or something more interesting was happening. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Phase 2 initiated. Be ready. Before I could respond, Natalie emerged from the ladies' room. She looked shaken, her perfect composure cracked around the edges. Sarah followed a moment later, calm and collected. Everything all right? I asked as Natalie sat down. Fine, she said tightly. Just girl talk. Sarah took the empty seat beside me, Tom's seat. I hope you don't mind if I join you. Tom seems to be having a work crisis. Indeed, Tom was still deep in conversation with his boss, but now David Chen had joined them. The three men were huddled together, and none of them looked happy. I'm sure it's nothing serious, Natalie said, but her voice was strained. Oh, I don't know, Sarah replied pleasantly. Tom's been under a lot of stress lately. Working late, mysterious phone calls, secret meetings. You know how it is. Natalie's face went pale. I wouldn't know. Of course not. You're not married to him. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I watched Natalie struggle to find a response, saw the exact moment she realized that Sarah knew everything. Sarah, she began. It's Mrs. Harlan, Sarah corrected coldly, and I think we understand each other perfectly. The confrontation was interrupted by Tom's return to the table. He looked like a man who'd been hit by a truck. His confidence was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. We need to go, he said to Natalie, ignoring everyone else. What happened? She asked. Not here. We'll talk outside. But Sarah wasn't finished. She stood up, her voice carrying clearly across the nearby tables. Tom, aren't you going to introduce me to your date? The word date landed like a bomb. Conversations at nearby tables stopped. Heads turned. The attention Tom normally craved was suddenly the last thing he wanted. Sarah, please, he said desperately. Not here. Why not here? You brought her to a public event. Surely you want people to know about your relationship. Natalie looked like she wanted to disappear. Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? Sarah pulled out her phone. Because I have photos that suggest otherwise. She held up the screen, showing the image of Tom and Natalie kissing in the restaurant parking lot. The people at the surrounding tables could see it clearly. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom made a grab for the phone, but Sarah stepped back smoothly. I wouldn't do that, Tom. There are witnesses. You crazy bitch! Tom! Richard Blackstone's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood behind Tom, his face granite hard. I think you should leave, now. Mr. Blackstone, I can explain. No explanation necessary. Your resignation will be on my desk Monday morning. The words hit Tom like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face going gray. Richard, please. Natalie stepped forward. This is all a misunderstanding. Mrs. Mason. David Chen appeared at her elbow. I think we should talk. Privately. The dominoes were falling exactly as we'd planned. Tom's career was over. Natalie was about to face her own reckoning, and Sarah and I had front row seats to watch it happen. But the best part was still coming. I stood up, straightening my tie, and looked around the room. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was on our table. The moment Natalie had orchestrated to humiliate me had become her own public execution. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. I'd like to propose a toast. I raised my champagne glass, and the gesture seemed to echo through the suddenly silent ballroom. 200 of the city's most influential lawyers, marketers, and business leaders turned to watch what they assumed would be an awkward attempt to salvage a social disaster. They had no idea what was coming. To trust, I began, my voice steady and clear. My wife recently taught me that trust isn't something you assume, it's something you test. Natalie's face went white. She knew that tone, knew I only used it in court when I was about to destroy an opposing witness. She suggested that a secure husband should be comfortable with his wife bringing her ex-boyfriend to a company party. A trust test, she called it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared as people began recording what was clearly about to become legendary office gossip. And she was right. Trust should be tested. So I decided to test hers. I pulled out my own phone, the screenshots already queued up. These are text messages between my wife and Tom Harlan, discussing their affair and their plans to leave their spouses after publicly humiliating us tonight. The first screenshot appeared on my phone screen, clearly visible to the surrounding tables. Sarah moved smoothly to display her own photos on a nearby table, creating a second viewing station. This email thread, I continued, shows them discussing exit strategies and asset protection, essentially planning how to financially devastate their spouses while conducting their affair. David Chen stepped closer to read the messages, his face darkening with each revelation. Richard Blackstone did the same, his expression shifting from anger to disgust. The trust test worked perfectly, I said, looking directly at Natalie. I learned that my wife is a calculating adulteress who views our marriage as a business arrangement to be dissolved at her convenience. Jack, please, Natalie whispered, tears streaming down her face. Not like this. Not like what? Not publicly? Not in front of your colleagues and clients? I smiled coldly. But this was your idea, honey. You wanted to test our marriage in public. Congratulations. It failed. Tom tried to step forward, but Marcus materialized beside him, a hand on his shoulder. I wouldn't, Marcus said quietly. You're in enough trouble already. This is insane, Tom sputtered. You can't just... Actually, I can. I turned to address the crowd. See, the beautiful thing about being a lawyer is that you learn to document everything. Every text, every email, every secret meeting, it's all evidence. Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly. Tom thought I was too trusting to investigate his affairs. He was wrong. I have financial records showing how he's been hiding assets, preparing for a divorce he planned to spring on me after the holidays. She held up a manila folder, thick with documents. Bank transfers, investment moves, even a consultation with a divorce attorney, all dated and documented. Richard Blackstone held out his hand. May I see those? Sarah handed him the folder. As he flipped through the contents, his face grew darker. Tom, he said finally, you used company resources to meet with attorneys about your personal affairs. That's a violation of your employment contract. Sir, I can explain. No need. Security will escort you out. Your personal effects will be mailed to you. Tom's world was crumbling in real time. His job, his reputation, his marriage, all destroyed in the span of 10 minutes. He looked around desperately, seeking an ally, but found only disgusted faces and raised phones. This isn't over, he said to me, his voice shaking with rage. Yes, it is. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You're unemployed. Your wife is divorcing you, and everyone in this room knows exactly what kind of man you are. You have no power here. Tom looked like he wanted to throw a punch, but the presence of 200 witnesses kept him in check. Instead, he turned and pushed through the crowd toward the exit, leaving Natalie alone to face the consequences. David Chen was reading the email screenshots on my phone, his expression growing more appalled by the minute. Natalie, he said finally. These messages were sent from your company email account. David, I can explain. You used Pinnacle resources to conduct a personal affair and plan the dissolution of your marriage. That's grounds for immediate termination. You can't fire me for my personal life. I can fire you for using company equipment for personal business, conducting yourself in a manner that reflects poorly on the agency, and lying to me about your schedule for the past 6 weeks. David's voice was ice cold. Consider this your formal notice. Security will escort you out. The crowd was buzzing now, phones capturing every moment of Natalie's destruction. Her carefully constructed professional image was evaporating before her eyes. "Jack," she turned to me desperately. "Please, we can work this out. It was a mistake." "No, it wasn't. It was a calculated decision to betray our marriage vows while planning to humiliate me publicly." I looked around the room, making sure everyone could hear. The only mistake was thinking I was too weak to fight back. "I never said you were weak. You called me reasonable. In your world, that's the same thing." I finished my champagne and set the glass down. "But here's the thing about reasonable people, Natalie. We pay attention. We document everything. And when we finally decide to act, we don't make mistakes." The security guards had arrived, professional and discreet, but unmistakably present. Natalie looked around the room one last time, seeing the faces of colleagues and clients who would never look at her the same way again. "This is cruel," she whispered. "This is justice," Sarah replied. "You wanted to destroy 2 marriages for your own entertainment. Instead, you destroyed your own life." As the security guards escorted Natalie toward the exit, she turned back one final time. "Jack, what about the house? Our assets?" I smiled, and for the first time all evening, it was genuine. "What about them? You said yourself, community property state, everything gets split 50-50. Of course, that was before you documented your adultery in writing and got yourself fired for cause. Adultery affects asset division, and unemployment affects alimony calculations." Her face went white as the implications hit her. "You planned this. I learned from the best. You taught me that marriage is just a business arrangement. Well, congratulations. You just got bought out." The security guards led her away, and the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement about the drama they'd just witnessed. Within hours, the story would be all over the city's legal and marketing communities. By Monday, everyone would know exactly what had happened at the Morrison-Blake Christmas party. Marcus appeared at my elbow with a fresh drink. "How do you feel?" I considered the question seriously. I felt lighter somehow, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. The reasonable, accommodating version of myself was gone, replaced by someone harder but more honest. "Free," I said finally. Sarah joined us, her own expression serene. "Tom's outside, trying to call an Uber. His credit cards aren't working." "Frozen the accounts?" "This morning. I figured he'd need some time to think about his choices." Richard Blackstone approached us, the manila folder still in his hands. "Mrs. Harlan, I owe you an apology. I should have seen what Tom was doing." "You're not responsible for his choices," Sarah replied gracefully. "Perhaps not. But I am responsible for the company he kept. This will not happen again." He turned to me. "Mr. Mason, I believe Marcus mentioned you might be interested in some legal work." "Potentially." "Good. Call my office Monday. We'll discuss terms." He handed Sarah the folder. "I'm sorry for what you've been through, but I'm impressed by how you handled it. If you ever decide to leave nursing, I could use someone with your attention to detail." After he left, the 3 of us stood together in the slowly emptying ballroom. The party was effectively over. Most people had left to spread the gossip or avoid being associated with the scandal. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now we go home and start rebuilding," I said. "The lawyers will handle the rest." "Together?" The question hung in the air. Sarah and I had been thrown together by betrayal, united by a common enemy. But what happened when the enemy was defeated? "I think," I said carefully, "that we should take things one day at a time. We both have a lot of healing to do." Sarah nodded, understanding. "But we'll stay in touch?" "Definitely. Partners in crime should stick together." Marcus raised his glass. "To new beginnings." "To justice served," Sarah added. "To trust," I concluded. "The real kind." We drank, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe again. Natalie had wanted to test our marriage publicly, and she'd succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She'd learned that trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with words or gestures. But she'd also learned something else, that the reasonable, accommodating husband she'd taken for granted was capable of playing a much deeper game than she'd ever imagined. As we walked out of the ballroom together, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork, asset division, and custody arrangements. But tonight, justice had been served with champagne and witnesses. The trust test was over, and I had passed with flying colors. 6 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking Boston Harbor, reviewing the final documents for the Blackstone financial merger. The deal was worth $20 million, and my firm's fee would set me up for life. Not bad for a reasonable pushover. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Natalie had tried to fight the asset division, claiming the public humiliation constituted emotional abuse, but her own documented adultery made that argument laughable. She'd walked away with her car, her clothes, and enough money to rent a studio apartment in a less fashionable neighborhood. Her career in marketing was over. The story of the Christmas party had become legend in Boston's business circles, and no reputable agency would touch her. Last I heard, she was working retail at a department store and living with her mother. Tom had fared even worse. Sarah had taken him for everything in their divorce, and without Richard Blackstone's recommendation, he couldn't find work in finance. He'd moved to Florida, supposedly trying to start over in real estate. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in." Sarah Harlan entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the kind of smile that had become familiar over the past few months. She'd left nursing after Richard Blackstone offered her a position as his personal assistant, and she'd proven to be brilliant at managing both his schedule and his business relationships. "Thought you could use a break," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Always. How did the Henderson meeting go?" "Signed the contract. Richard was impressed with your negotiation strategy. We'd been working together regularly since the divorce proceedings ended. Sarah's attention to detail complemented my legal expertise, and we'd developed an easy partnership that had nothing to do with our shared history of betrayal." "Any word from your former spouse?" she asked, sipping her coffee. "Natalie?" "Not directly. Her lawyer called last week asking if I'd consider reducing her alimony payments. Apparently retail doesn't pay as well as marketing." "What did you tell him?" "That the alimony was set by the court based on her earning potential when she was employed. If she chose to torpedo her career through poor decision-making, that wasn't my problem." Sarah laughed. "Harsh, but fair. I learned from the best. How about Tom?" Radio silence. "His mother called once, wanting to know if I'd consider reconciliation. I told her I'd rather marry a rabid wolverine." We sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the harbor. 6 months ago, we'd been strangers united only by our spouse's betrayal. Now we were... what exactly? Friends seemed inadequate. Business partners was accurate, but incomplete. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Shoot. Do you ever regret it? The way we handled things at the party?" I considered the question seriously. Did I regret destroying Natalie and Tom publicly? Did I feel guilty about the calculated precision with which we'd dismantled their lives? "No," I said finally. "They made their choices. We just made sure there were consequences." "Even though it was cruel? Was it more cruel than what they planned to do to us? They wanted to humiliate us publicly, then discard us like used tissues. We just turned the tables." Sarah nodded slowly. "I keep waiting to feel bad about it, but mostly I just feel... relieved. Relieved that it's over? Relieved that I finally stood up for myself. I spent 12 years trying to be the perfect wife, accommodating Tom's every whim, making excuses for his behavior. It felt good to stop being a victim. I understood completely. The reasonable, accommodating version of myself had died that night at the Christmas party. What emerged was someone harder but more honest, someone who refused to be taken advantage of. "So, what now?" she asked. "Now we keep building. The Blackstone account is just the beginning. I'm thinking about starting my own firm." "Sounds ambitious." "I've learned that life's too short to play it safe." I looked at her carefully. "I was wondering if you might be interested in a change of scenery." "What kind of change?" "Office manager for Mason Legal Services. Better pay, equity stake, and the chance to build something from the ground up." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership. You're wasted as an assistant, even to someone like Richard. You have a gift for reading people, for seeing the angles others miss. That's worth more than any law degree." She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the harbor. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Are you sure this is about business?" The question I'd been avoiding for weeks. Sarah and I had chemistry, anyone could see it. But we'd both been burned badly, and neither of us was ready to trust our judgment about relationships. "Honestly, I don't know, but I know you're brilliant, I know I trust you, and I know we work well together. Everything else we can figure out as we go." She smiled, the first truly relaxed smile I'd seen from her since the night we'd met at Brewster's coffee shop. "When do I start?" "How about Monday?" "Done." She stood up and extended her hand. "Partners?" I shook it, feeling the same electric awareness that had been building between us for months. But this time, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt like possibility. "Partners." After she left, I turned back to my computer and opened a new document. "Mason Legal Services. Business plan," I typed. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Drinks tonight? I have gossip about your ex-wife." I typed back, "Rain check. I have a business to plan." "New firm?" "New everything." 3 dots appeared, then, "About time. You were wasted at Morrison, Blake." He wasn't wrong. I'd spent 7 years trying to be the man I thought Natalie wanted. Reasonable, accommodating, safe. It had taken her betrayal to show me that safe was just another word for invisible. The sun was setting over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere across town, Natalie was probably finishing her shift at the department store, going home to her mother's house and the life she'd built from the wreckage of her choices. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, but no regret either. She'd taught me that trust was earned, not assumed. That respect was commanded, not requested. That sometimes the only way to win was to stop playing by other people's rules. The trust test had worked perfectly, just not the way she'd intended. I closed my laptop and gathered my things. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, I was going home to my own house, my own life, my own choices. For the first time in years, that felt like enough. As I walked through the empty office building, my footsteps echoing in the marble lobby, I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago. Reasonable Jack would have confronted Natalie privately, maybe suggested counseling, definitely avoided a public scene. He would have tried to save a marriage that was already over. But Reasonable Jack was gone, replaced by someone who understood that kindness without boundaries was just weakness in disguise. Someone who knew that trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with good intentions and wishful thinking. Someone who had learned that the best revenge wasn't cruelty. It was success. I stepped out into the cool evening air and smiled. The trust test was over, and I had passed with flying colors. Now it was time to see what else I could accomplish when I stopped trying to be reasonable and started trying to be real. The future stretched ahead, full of possibilities I'd never dared to imagine when I was trying to be the perfect husband to an imperfect wife. Sarah would be part of it, in whatever capacity felt right for both of us. The business would grow. The scars would heal. And somewhere in the distance, barely audible over the sound of traffic and harbor waves, I could swear I heard the sound of dominoes falling. Not the ones that had destroyed my old life, but the ones that would build my new one. Justice had been served, trust had been tested and found wanting. And from the ashes of betrayal, something stronger had emerged. It was time to see how high it could fly.